King Knight. Not really a king nor a knight. He comes off as fake in his level in Shovel Knight and repeatedly told that he's just playing at one by the other knights. So, what of his story? What did he do to get the Pridemore Kingdom and usurp the original king of his throne? But more importantly, is his gameplay at least somewhat harder than his counterparts? Find out in like 3 seconds. Before all of it, the land was filled by legendary adventurers who essentially kept the peace. But Youstis took the land by storm in a grand tournament at that, and it had King Knight's full attention, of course. King Knight was played off as a fool, well, because he is, but he still wanted to be crowned King of Cards, so he sets off on his journey to become a king with a kingdom of his own. But first, Mother wants to speak to us and just gives us unconditional love, and King Knight is a whiny little baby about everything. So, off on our journey after Mom cooks us a meal, and that meal is needed because we are facing Spectre Knight next, who hints at something watching us at the start of our journey. But the fool that King Knight is, he still acts as if everything is beneath him, and Spectre tries to show him true metal, but we win anyway. And he gives us a starter Youstis deck, but only in order to play our role. So we do just that and start playing Youstis. And lo and behold, Black Knight is our first quote-unquote boss. Draining all of his life points later, he tells us something doesn't feel right, and then he sets off on his own whilst a bird and a bard talk to us. They're looking for their own champion to take on King Pridemore for the Youstis crown. So we join their crew on the Glidewing and we set off. Whilst on our adventure, we gain items, recruit random people, deny Ghost's flashback, and destroy Baz's training area. Then our mother shows up, because she just grabbed one of our ropes and was abducted into the Glidewing. But they prattle on about King Pridemore. Then we tell our mom to stay out of our quest, but she still stays. Traveling onward, we recruit a couple more people, defeat the Phantom Striker, play more Youstis, and arrive at Pridemore's doorstep. Reaching him, we forego cards and challenge him to battle because of a play on words in the rules. So, Pridemore dons his armor to fight us, and yada yada, we defeat him. He elects to join us and impart knowledge of the Triple King and kingly wisdom in general, but we just sit there and stare. Arriving back at the Glidewing, everyone is enamored at Pridemore being there under the guise that we beat him at Youstis. But nonetheless, Pridemore gives us information on a secret route to the Triple King. So we make our way to the Triple King's area and begin towards him. Therefore, we recruit even more people, take on another Youstis Tavern, defeat Mole Knight, Treasure Knight, and then we finally get to the Triple King. He takes great offense to our attitude and then seeks to humble us, but instead we take him down. And again, the Triple King imparts kingly knowledge to King Knight, but he pretends to listen. And now an Acolyte follows us as proof we defeated the Triple King, and from here forward we go to the Birder Bluffs in order to find the most recent learned of King Birder. So again, we recruit more people, play more Youstis at a tavern, defeat Polar Knight, but come upon Spectre Knight, who is talking with 2 other people about King Knight and that he is a little bitch that just follows orders. So, King Knight appears and still acts like an arrogant kid, and Spectre Knight is slightly trying to protect him and guide him along a path at the same time. So they fight, and Spectre gives final words of warning before we continue on our journey. Getting to Birder's palace, we traverse through and finally meet the new king, where he has been expecting us, traps us, and tries to make us kneel before him. But we say no, and we just defeat him. But lo and behold, King Birder was just a regular birder, who was enchanted by the Enchantress, who herself was disguising as some random person and reveals that she made Youstis in order to lure the Youstis judges into one place to control all of them. She continues on about how she already has won, and King Knight kinda just stands there. Not only that, he gets a ride back where Birder explains the Enchantress's plan, and he just doesn't get why it is important at all. Back at the Glidewing, everyone is either concerned, worried, or prepared, but the captain bands everyone together, and King Knight just stands there. Again, wanting to be a king. In the Enchantress's domain, we for the last time go play more Youstis, a lot more Youstis, and make our way to the boss lady herself. She's impressed that we've come this far, and as the others show, she plays into King Knight's self-importance and kingly attitude. They say we've banded together, then leave King Knight to fend for himself. Exactly what the Enchantress puts as saying that they're his jesters. So we fight, and we win. Then everyone pops out and congratulates us. But the Enchantress boasts that a king acts and not huddles behind a champion, as she plays even more into King Knight's want to be a king. So she turns the 3 Youstis judges into pure essence and combines them to make the true final boss, King Head. I don't know the actual name. But we win, again, and everyone is left to hang. Pridemore asks for help after saying her spell is broken, but the Enchantress chimes in once more, playing it to King Knight's kingly disposition, all in order to sway him to her side, and it works. Pridemore tries his best, but King Knight silences them, and he is now part of the Enchantress's Order of No Quarter, and his first order is for every Joustus card to be shred, because the only crown that matters is his. We then see the effects it has on the land once it happens, essentially causing chaos. But Pridemore visits King Knight one last time to try and be reasonable, but King Knight has what he wants now, and his attitude has heightened to a massive degree. Pridemore leaves once he gives his final word, and his mother wishes him well as King Knight calls out to her, but forgoes it as he has a castle to tend to. But he's finally rid of everything he deemed a problem, and can settle into his kingly ways. But suddenly, Shovel Knight, completing the timeline. I guess. King Knight, in my opinion, finally breaks from what I was complaining about in the past two entries. The relics, mostly, and gameplay overall are vastly different. Instead of having a weapon attack like our predecessors, we fucking shoulder charge our ass at the enemies the whole time. And in doing so, we then enter a state where we spin and can deal damage upon landing on an enemy. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should talk about just the baseline changes, because upon loading in and taking damage, you'll notice that our health bar has changed from the other three. And the change is simple. Instead of 2 hits dealing 1 full point of damage, 1 damage is 1 heart. But that doesn't apply to bosses. The bosses still follow the old way where we have to hit them twice to do 1 point of damage. I personally like this change. It makes you think more if you keep getting hit and taking relics into account when it comes to bosses, instead of just being super safe no matter what you choose to do. The bosses now drop a heart that'll only restore 1 health point, and now the only way to restore health is by acquiring an upgrade where you have to cry to spawn hearts, then they have to fall onto you, and then if you get hit, they'll disappear until you cry again. However, it is only 5 hearts per level, and in my opinion, a good change for the overall game and difficulty. I honestly don't know how other people feel about it, but I believe it is a good change. The other way, we will talk about later. But everything else in this aspect is pretty much the same. Now the flow of the game has also been flipped. Instead of each level being the area's boss, it's now a 3-act structure, leading to either the next area or a boss. Because the goal this time around isn't defeating the bosses, well, at least until the last bit of the area. It's Joustus and clearing levels, which Joustus will be its own subject in just a moment, but for now I want to keep gushing about the main gameplay. The main world map has a lot more going on with it now, like places to go and secrets to find. So, they are color-coded for which place belongs to who, like red being Mole Knight, green being Plague Knight, gold being Treasure Knight, and so on and so forth. But with Mole Knight, his 3 levels don't end with him being a boss. He spawns on the map and you have the option to beat him, which keeps in line with the game's story because there's no real point in fighting them when your goal is just the Joustus crown and being king of cards. But I did it anyway, and they're not really that changed at all except for Spectre Knight and the new bosses, but with the way you essentially combo, they are now slightly more difficult than before. So I never finished earlier what you actually do after you enter the spinning state. Well, after you successfully hit something and start spinning, if you hit something whilst spinning, you can dash again right after. Otherwise, if you don't use a relic, you'll just spin into death. So it inherently makes it more dangerous as you're using yourself as the weapon and, well, not a weapon. And in my opinion, a lot more rewarding if you can manage a combo of following the boss, not getting hit, but being able to hit him multiple times with your spin and then dash and spin and dash, etc. You do get a roll that you can turn your dash into if you either don't want to commit to the dash or roll into a multi-hit enemy so that you can get away from an attack. But you also have the option of canceling your dash outright if you hit the other direction if you're fast enough. It makes me happy that it's harder than the other 3 just off rip because there was a change in the health system and now the attack method. But armor upgrades and armor aren't all that special, just like the other games. You have your flashy one, survive pits, hit them, drop something that helps you, and your movement ones. The upgrades this time around are hold down to get hearts, which is the only good one, your roll can be augmented to do more damage, and lastly, you release a wave of energy upon landing from a spin. Overall, making bosses just somewhat harder because of this. But the bosses that are in the other 3 aren't different. Now the new bosses are something else entirely. Pridemore, Truple, Spectre, Birder, Triple King, and, well, a secret boss. King Pridemore is your basic boss. He dons his armor and sends kind of slow moving attacks at you as you kind of get the ropes still of King Knight. When you attack him too many times, he'll put his arms up and try and defend from you, but then he'll attack right after if you keep trying to hit him. He'll do a charge attack that you can still hit him on, but he'll still charge at you and you'll more than likely get hit. He'll call his griffin down, send fire pillars, and that's pretty much it. He will occasionally send out some spiky balls, but that's only if he reaches a certain health threshold. He really doesn't do much else except punch a little bit. So King Pridemore basically just tests your base knowledge of your kit, not nothing advanced yet, however he is a good starter. The Triple King on the other hand tests basically almost everything to a higher degree. He tests your positioning and how well you can handle yourself before and after you hit something, because your platform that you're on is just a tiny boat. Other than that, it is death. In order to move your own platform around, you have to hit it. He can move it slightly, but only if his giant body is in the presence of your boat, so it just pushes it out of the way. You don't entirely need to move it that much, based on where Triple King is. If Triple King is near you, as long as you are adept at moving at this point, you dash into him, you hit him once with your spin attack, and then you can dash again back to your boat if he's doing something. If not, you can keep wailing on him. But if you miss your movement, and you fuck up, well, you can either hope that you can get back to your boat, or you kind of just die. Or you hope you can get hit by him so you can go back to your boat with another dash. Because again, his moves are kind of basic. He kind of just sends his entire body at you. He will spawn minions to protect him from your spin attack. He'll spawn a bunch of minions in a wave to protect from your spin attack and or a dash, which you can also just combo off the fish anyway, so it doesn't really entirely matter. He'll spit some goop at you, and then he'll go into the water, appear, trying to capitalize on your position where you could just push your boat away. Then you can wail on him. He'll do it a couple times, then go back to a neutral position where you can keep wailing on him and probably send more of his minions at you. Other than that, he's a pretty good boss to test your positioning and how well you are moving at this point. Because the next boss, King Birder, tests it a lot more. King Birder is almost a no-holds-barred. He sends a lot of projectiles at you, you send a lot of nothing at him except your body and hoping you do not get hit. He also can heal himself, which Triple can do as well, which I forgot to mention, but it's not really as prevalent as it is in King Birder's fight. King Birder usually just does a couple of things with projectiles that after a certain threshold of health, he will start putting the walls closer towards you, and he'll start sending himself as like an actual birder towards you with giant pillars and cubes. So it's a lot of dodging. Not much else to really say. Just a lot of dodging, don't get hit, and make sure you hit King Birder. Which at this point, if you are adept at movement, you can essentially do on your first try and not really have any other problem with it. Now King, because I still don't know his actual name, has two weak points, his left and right ear. Basically, you want to use his hands as platforms to get up to the ear and hit them. Other than that, it's a lot of anticipating and dodging his attacks in order to get onto his hands, which also move around when you're on them, and if you hit his ear too many times, he'll move his hand farther away so you will not have a platform to hit his ear on. He has a second phase where he moves a lot faster and in weirder patterns where you just have to anticipate even more and hopefully you dodge better, and all the platforms below you are now gone, so failing kind of results in, well, death. Really not much else to say about King except he has one projectile where he shoots out of his eyes and it bounces. And he's kind of annoying to deal with how fast he moves his hand platforms away and how fast his own hands can take out the platforms below. Other than that, he's just annoying. Now the secret boss to me is kind of a bunch of bullshit, but that's also probably because I'm bad at the game sometimes. The secret boss uses crystals to attack you, each color does something different. However, each projectile is homing when used, and the way you attack her is you throw yourself into the crystal, bounce off the crystal, and then bounce off her head or hit her in the head repeatedly to take her life down. Hitting the crystal also stuns it for like a second, so it doesn't immediately use its projectiles. So it also gives you ample time to just go hit her head. But that's basically the boss. She'll rush left and right, throw a bunch of crystals out, each crystal does a different projectile, and you have to dodge a lot. And dodging the projectile isn't really that easy because they home and they kind of do it in stages, and it also throws it to the ground. It also just comes at you in waves, so it really just depends on the projectile you're dodging. Not a lot of them are fun. Green is my least favorite, and then blue, red is easy, and then yellow is just mediocre, I guess. What do you use against these bosses? Well, yourself and relics. The relics this time around help you a lot, but aren't overpowered, but also aren't just a side piece because of your base gameplay to a degree. You can still play the game without using the relics, as I know relic run, but relics complement what you do this time around. Want to dash then Mega Dash after that? Or Flaming Sword thrust in the air to land somewhere? Or Bubble to float across something? All after using something in your base arsenal? Go ahead, they complement what you want to do by adding more, instead of just being there to do something niche that isn't needed or just stupid to spam. Plus, they help keep your combo up if you fail, but it can still fuck you up if you use them incorrectly. So they're not all safe like all the other ones. Well, in my opinion at least. Joustus is a card game. I'm not well versed in order to fully explain how I feel about it. I can for Yu-Gi-Oh though. I can tell you my favorite decks, I can tell you basically how to play the game. But this, Joustus plays like that one game from Skylanders, Skystones. It's not exactly like Skystones, but if you think of it more like Triple Triad, but instead of Triple Triad, you push a card towards a gem. Okay, fuck it. Your goal in Joustus is to put your cards onto the gems on the board, but you can't put the card directly onto the gem. So you use the arrows on the cards to push them onto the gem or push them into the null zone to either get them out of your way or set up your cards to be pushed. But you can also push them off of the gem as well, but your opponent can do the exact same. There are zones that you can't put cards in unless the card otherwise says you can. More on that in a second. And you can't push an arrow on an arrow unless your arrow is more powerful. Therefore, in order for the game to end, no more cards can be placed onto the board. Then gems are counted and whoever has the most wins. And your reward is taking one of your opponent's cards. But if it's a gem sweep, you get to take up to 3. Hopefully I explained that in a comprehensive way, because that's the base mechanics of the game, because it can get wacky with how much stuff it adds. The game starts you off slow with just 1 gem to keep track of and push your card onto. And it gets up to 3, then 5 in specific instances. They also give you a deck of just single arrow cards, which gets you into the groove of the game. Then they throw multi-cards with different strengths, then ability cards. And ability cards are fun, to say the least. To better explain ability cards, the arenas also require an explanation. The arenas come in many different shapes and sizes. A 2x2, a 3x3, a 2x3, and a 1x... what the fuck is this? 4x4 with a cross in the middle, and terrain obstacles. So, some push arrows and abilities you'll come across are bombs that can explode cards or terrain, graveyard cards that can be placed in the null zones, double arrows, triple arrows that degrade over time, conveyors that try to push in that direction every turn, slam that'll push every card in that direction that it can push in the directions that it's pointing once it's been placed, switch where the arrows will be switched after pushing or being pushed, and finally, cascade that turns a card to your side if pushed and vice versa. But if you're facing an important character, they'll have an ability such as sending a lightning bolt at you, and if it touches your coin before you've done anything, your turn is up. Some include swapping the gems on the board around and other character specific ones that the wiki doesn't mention at all, and I've got the footage if someone wants to look at it and update it, I guess. Anywho, I've explained the basis of it pretty much. Was it too much, or did I not include enough? Because now it's strategy time. Because your whole goal is to get your cards onto the gems and block your opponent from being able to push them off. So honestly, the only strategy I can personally tell you is to fill your deck with powerful cards, cover every direction, and always be thinking of what your opponent will do if you place down the one card right there and fuck yourself. And always have cheats on standby. Oh yeah, cheats. So Chester sells cards and cheats this time around, where you can swap all cards on gems to your side, replace your opponent's hand with all Betos, or place all of your cards in your hand at once. Every person can beat the game without cheats, obviously. I use it mostly for other people that have abilities as well, or if I'm pissed and don't want to lose a card. But overall, that's Joustus. My thoughts on it are, it's fun, but can be annoying at times because the cards the opponents get just utterly destroy what I have in my current hand, but then it becomes the vice versa. And overall, the Cascade cards are not really that fun to play against because you have to specifically play around them the majority of the time if they're in play, whilst almost, if not all of the rest of the stuff that happens can be played with or countered, whilst Cascade is just a yoink and you're sitting there dumbfounded. But overall, it's fun, it ties into the story, but it's not tied to the actual gameplay, because you don't even need to play Joustus to beat the game. This is essentially the end of the review/overview. From here on, it's completely personal, so if you don't want to hear me spiel, then skip to this timestamp. And if you didn't, well, here I go. This whole game has been great. Not just King Knight, but all 4 of them. The amount that I personally just enjoy them, despite how easy it is, mainly held because of how just the game looks. The sprites themselves just give such charm to them. Like every single one, well, except for 2, which, don't get me wrong, those 2 are done really well, just not charming for obvious reasons, but they just look like they were made with care and beautiful. Like, the colors in the sprites, the animations, they just make me happy. They make me melt. I enjoy pixel animations a lot, actually, to a very high degree, mainly because I grew up playing Pokemon and a vast majority of other games that were pixel and were always charming. And since this is 16-bit inspired, I fell in love with it. But not just because of the pixels. I'm a sucker for armor and knights, and well, boom, different kinds of knights with different styles and personalities is just entertaining to me. The dialogue between some of the characters are hilarious to me, the characters and the way they act is great, and then the stories they told are good. They're not revolutionary, but they don't have to be. A story of a naive child playing at a king, a friend who tried to protect a child only to die and give the last of himself to protect said child, a story of love, and an adventure to save a friend and by proxy save the world. And speaking of the world, it's colorful and full of life. The different areas of each knight's domain, the side characters and the wandering vagabonds, just being themselves and a part of the world. The NPCs of each town being either witty or eccentric, including Mr. Hatman. The enemies and how some of them really wouldn't be enemies if the Enchantress never existed. There's just a bunch, and I really wish we got a Polar Knight story. Yes, I know that the DLCs were decided by a vote, which is actually kind of amazing, in all honesty, because they gave the community an overview of what the character would do, and some story. They let us vote on which one we wanted. But damn it, you can't just give me these bits of dialogue about Polar and Black Knight without wanting me to play as them later, but you give me Plague and King Knight instead. Still, regardless, they were fun and had stories to go with them. I hope I've accurately said why I think this game series is charming for me personally. If not, here's a few more objectives that should... Adjectives? Yes, that should just go flying by. I meant adjectives, not adjectives. Shut up. Adjectives flying by. So as a final note, these games have been great. Starting in 2014 and essentially ending in 2019, if you don't count the spin-offs, it's been a fun ride that took me back personally to when I would play old Pokemon. It's charming, beautiful, 16-bit inspired pixels, entertaining stories, a pretty easy battle system, decent side content, and some more. The whole game was strong throughout the entirety of it. Plague Knight was its weakest, but King Knight was a strong finish. And you're just hoping they do another Shovel Knight or other pixel adventure that isn't a spin-off. And if you haven't already, give Shovel Knight a try, it'll be worth your while. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and if you've watched all 4 of my Shovel Knight videos, I appreciate you a whole bunch, honestly. But also let me know what I could do better, because I know there's a lot of that. But also let me know what you liked. However, again, thank you, and take care of yourself.